All right, we're back. We've been talking strings, and we're about to move into the String-2 section on CodingBat. The kind of niche about String-2 is that everything is going to require a loop in order to do it. And we're going to basically use everything that we've learned so far in order to accomplish these things. So the question is, what have we learned so far? We know 5 string methods, right? So coming out of the string class, we know char@, which takes in an integer, and it returns the char that's at that location. We know substring that takes in 2 integers, and we're going to get a subsection of the string from there. Substring is overloaded, of course, so there's a version that takes in only 1 integer, but functions basically the same way. In this case, we're going to start at this index and go through the rest of the string. With this version of substring, we're just getting this section, inclusive, exclusive. We've also learned the equals method. It'll tell if 2 strings are equal to each other, right? So that returns a Boolean true or false. They're equal or they are not. We know index of now. This one's going to be less used in this section than the other ones, but it's still a method that we've learned. Index of will look for either a string and tell us where it's at, or you can look for a char. These two, again, this is an overloaded method. They function the exact same way. To you, the user, you're really not going to be able to see much of a difference. Either you pass in a string, you pass in a char, the function's going to function the same way, no matter what. And one that I've just skimmed right past is length. It's a method. We learned it. Okay, so really, I'm looking at this as like 5 methods. We've learned length, char@, substring, equals, index of. Let's use those things to tackle these String-2 problems. Again, they require a loop. I'm going to start off with doubleChar. Given a string, return a string, where for every char in the original, there are 2 chars. We're going to take in the, and then print off, we're going to return, I should say, TTHHEE. Right? We're taking in a string. We're ultimately returning a string. The strategy here, and the strategy for a lot of our loop problems, is going to be starting off, we're going to create an empty string. What is an empty string? It's a string, right? Note the double quotes. This is a string literal, but the length is 0. There are no characters in it. If I were to ask what is the length of RTN, we would get 0. I mean, like literally, if I would say RTN.length, we would get 0. We've actually seen this in some test cases in CodingBat where they have passed in empty strings, and we've had to basically cater our method to handle those strings with a length of 0. Okay, so I'm going to start out with an empty string. I'm actually ready to start looping, and I'm going to say we're going to loop through the string. I'm going to create a for loop, and integer I is going to start out at 0. This is corresponding with index 0 of my string, and I basically want to keep looping as long as I is less than the length, right? Less than the length is kind of, this is like kind of weird at first. I don't think this is how students normally think and function. But if you think about this, right, our first index is 0. If we were to actually try to access the element at index I, the character at index I, we would be out of bounds. If we tried to access the element at length. What do I mean? If I did, we'll leave it here as a comment, str.length, right? The length of this one is 3. But if I try to go in using char@ and get that character, right? If I try to go into str, get the character at this index, that's going to be out of bounds. I being less than that means that we will stop before we reach this point. I will never actually be equal to str.length. So we're going to start I at 0. We'll keep looping as long as I is less than the length, and with each iteration I do in I++. So I would say that this is kind of a standard loop that we'll use to traverse a string, kind of a standard loop that we'll use to loop through a string. I'm not really looping through the string. All I'm doing is creating a variable, and it basically will keep incrementing as long as it is less than the length of the string. I plan on using this as an index. I think I'm talking too much, and we really should just get into the coding, but this is basically a standard loop that we'll use to loop through str. With each iteration, I'm going to pull out the current character. Right? since I'm literally talking characters, I'm going to say char ch is equal to str.charat I. Right, I'm going in the string. I'm going to use char at. I'm going to get the element at index I. Initially, I is 0. So in this example, that's a t. I'm getting back a t, and I'm saving it into a variable. Right? I would then increment at the end of the iteration. We would check to see, are we still in bounds? We would then go into the string and get the character at index I, which is now 1. That would be an H on the second iteration. I++. It would be an E on the last iteration. I++. We would check to see, are we still in bounds, at which point we would be out of bounds, and so we would stop, and that would keep us from going out of bounds. All right, so I'm going to pull out the current character. And what I want to do to it is add it to my return string. Right? In theory, I want RTN to be this character. Right? But twice. I have saved in the current character on my first iteration, that's a T, and I want to basically do that twice. Now, the thing with doing this over and over and over and over again is that we would be replacing what is in RTN. So not only do I want to add the current character twice, I need to basically add it to what is already there. I want RTN with each iteration to become what it currently is plus the current character 2 times. Okay, we do this for every character until I run out of characters, meaning after the loop is over, the value of RTN should look something like this. So I'm going to return it, which, by the way, I called this RTN because I ultimately plan on returning it. I'm going to hit my go button, and you see everything looks pretty good. I quite like the variable here, right, because we end up referring to it twice. If you did not use the variable, you're looking at doing this in 2 different places. That is technically not as efficient because I basically have to figure out what is the current character twice as opposed to figuring out what is the current character 1 time and then saving it into a variable. But by doing so, you can get rid of the braces if that's your jam. Also of note, we've talked about how substring can be used to get a single character. And I'm going to go ahead and show you this route. Right? This version of substring, we can actually use it to simulate charat, except it's technically giving us back a string. It's not a big deal. We ultimately are putting it into a string anyway. So, yeah, let's back this up. I'm going to bring back my braces. And I'm going to get the current character with each iteration. I know it's a string, but I'm calling it CH. I'm going to get the current character using substring. All right, so let's ignore this for now. With each iteration, we're looping. I'm going to get the current character, but I'm going to use substring. Okay. How do I do that? Well, with charat, it was just I. If I do this, right, I'm only providing 1 parameter, which means we're calling this version of substring. What that's going to do is start at that index and go through the rest of the string. Using this as an example, the very first iteration, the value of CH will be the entire string, the. We would, in theory, add that to our return string. On the next iteration, I would increment, and so now it's at 1. So it would then tack on HE, and then I would increment. We would tack on the last one. We would tack on an E. This isn't quite what we want. Right? I have to use this version of substring in order to get the current character. And that is simply put going to be I, comma, I plus 1. Right? Something to think about here is that I told you that the difference in the parameters will tell you the length of this string. The mathematical difference, the absolute difference between I and I plus 1 is 1. I'm getting a substring starting at index I, and it's only 1 character. Right? Initially, we're here, so that's going to be a T. I would then increment. We're going to be here. That is 1, comma, 2. So I would get the H. I would increment. It would be 2, comma, 3. In theory, 3 sounds like it's out of bounds, but don't forget, inclusive, exclusive. So this index will be part of my string. This will not be. I'm getting the current character as a string using substring. What I want to do with each iteration is say that RTN is what it was plus the current character twice. So there is a solution using Substring instead of char at. I'm a fan of the char at one because it's just a lot less stuff. However, I did want to show off that we can do the I, I plus 1 thing. This is going to be important later on, right? Whenever we're getting like 2 characters at a time, like literally the next problem. Last thing I'll point out is that here we see RTN is equal to what it is plus something else. We've seen a format like this before, but with numbers. As it turns out, this actually works with strings as well. We can say RTN plus equals CHCH. That's the exact same thing as I just had, right? That is the same thing as saying RTN is equal to RTN plus CHCH. This and this are the exact same thing. I'm going to hit the go button, and you're going to see that we get the correct solution yet again. I'm going to leave the variable in. I like it. If you didn't use the variable, you would be looking at doing this twice, but it would allow you to get rid of some lines and some braces. Ultimately, it is up to you. But as you can see, this is starting to get long. By the way, this vertical line that you see here is kind of the recommended space. So you want to stay kind of in that range when you're coding. It's just recommended, right? I've gone beyond it with my comment, but that is a recommendation. You see a similar thing actually in IntelliJ. With that, we're going to go to the next one. CountHi. Return the number of times that the string hi appears anywhere in the given string. Okay. So this one's interesting. We're taking in a string. We're ultimately returning an integer. So I won't be making a return string, an empty string. Instead, we're going to be making an integer to keep a count as we go through. So let's take this string as an example and talk about our strategy here. Yeah, I'll leave that. What I want to do is take our string, and I basically want to go through looking at 2 characters at a time to ask, are they hi? I want to know, are these 2 characters equal to hi? What about these 2 characters? Are they equal to hi? What about these 2 characters? What about these 2 characters, right? So you can see we're incrementing just 1 space at a time, but then checking 2 characters at a time. So how do we do this? I'm going to start with an integer, which I'm calling count. And initially it's 0. We're going to loop. I'm going to do a standard loop. I starts at 0 as long as it's less than the length, I++, right? We're starting at the very beginning, going towards the end, just 1 at a time, 1 index at a time. With each iteration, I want to get the current 2 characters. Right? So let's back this up. And I'm going to include I, which is my index, right? Initially, we're at index 0. And what I want to do is get these 2 characters, A, B. Okay, since we're getting 2 characters, there's no way around it. You need substring, right? So I'm going to create a string. I'm going to call it 2. It is the current 2 characters. In my example, that should be AB on the very first iteration when I is 0. So how do we get that? Well, we're going to use substring starting at index 0 up to this index, which is 2. Okay, I'm going to put it in terms of I because we want it to update as we advance through the string using our loop. So I'm going to cut a 2-character substring beginning at I, and I'm going to get 2 characters, so I plus 2. I really, really like this rule of thumb, this idea that the mathematical difference, the absolute value difference of the parameters will tell me the length of the string. I'm going to begin at index I, and I'm going to go 2 characters in advance. This is going to give me a 2-character substring. Initially, when I is 0, we're looking at 0, 2. Using this as an example, this is index 0, this is index 2, so I'm going to get everything starting at index 0 up to index 2. That should be A, B on my first example. Okay, what do I want to know? I want to know, is this 2-character substring equal to hi? The reason I'm getting a 2-character substring is because I'm ultimately comparing it to hi, hi. Right? Getting any other number of characters, getting 1 character, that's obviously not going to equal hi. Getting 3 or more characters, that's not going to be equal to hi. So we want exactly 2 characters, which is what we're doing. I want to know, does 2 equal that? Right? Does my 2-character substring equal hi? Notice we're using the equals method because I am comparing 2 strings. If this is true, so if this is true, I have found it. Right? What do we do in the event that we find it? I'm going to count it. Right? Every time I find hi in my string, I'm going to do a count plus plus. Right? Notice there's no else here. If it's not, like if this is false, we just skip this and keep going. So we're going to, here's our strategy. We start out with a counter. It's at 0. We're going to loop through our string. With each iteration, we're going to get the current 2 characters as a string and ask, are those 2 characters equal to the string that I'm looking for? If they are, we increase our count by 1. If they're not, the count stays the same. I would then increment. We would check to see, are we in bounds? We would cut a 2-character substring and just keep doing that. We basically do it for every 2 characters in str. After the loop is over, I've gone through every character in the string. We should have an accurate count. I'm going to return count. All right, so what went wrong here? We see a string index out of bounds exception 10 on line 7. Line 7, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This is where we're going out of bounds. I tried to access an element at index 10. Okay. It was with this test case, the one that we've been talking about. Let's see, how long is this one? We got, notice I'm asking for length, not index, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. This thing is only has a length of 9, and yet I tried to access index 10. Okay, but I am making sure I'm in bounds by checking str.length, right? Here's the thing. We're going to keep incrementing I. At some point, I is right here, right? That is what, index 8, because we just said it has a length of 9. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That is index 8, right? So when I has a value of 8, I plus 2 has a value of 10. This is inclusive, exclusive. So I'm not actually trying to access the element at index 10. So how are we actually going out of bounds? It's the index 9. When I'm right here, I'm trying to cut a 2-character substring. I'm going from here out a character. And whenever I try to go out that 1 additional character, I'm going out of bounds. Okay. I basically want to stop here. Whenever I is at this index, that is index 7. That's when I want to do my last iteration. Notice I'm talking about when we stop, because there's multiple ways to, actually make this work. But what I recommend is focusing on when should we stop. The easiest way to fix this is focusing on when we stop. We want to stop here. We want to stop when I is at this index. Okay. What in our loop controls when we stop? This is effectively when we start. This is what we do at the end of each iteration. This is kind of our stopping condition. All I'm going to do is subtract 1 off. Right? Instead of this being my last iteration, I'm going to go 1 back. This is my last iteration. Right? So I just simply put a -1 here on my condition, and notice that is keeping us in bounds. We were only having an issue at the very end. Right? When we're on this last character, I can't cut a 2-character substring. I only have 1 character left. Our solution, let's stop 1 earlier. Right here, this 2 could simply be this str.substring. I'll show you that. This is kind of messy. The variable is super clean, but this technically works, right? We're going into str. we are calling substring. Keep in mind that substring returns a string. Doesn't matter which version you're using, you're getting back a string. What that means is what I have highlighted is a string. I'm asking, is the string equal to hi? I'm going to hit the go button, and you see that we get a correct solution. What's the advantage of doing this? Well, now technically, my loop actually only has one statement inside of it. It looks like two. But this count++ is not inside the loop. It's inside the if statement. Since there's only one statement here, I can actually get rid of the braces. So this is the most concise solution. I'm not asking you to have this. Definitely not right away. I'm not even necessarily saying this is better. The variable was a little bit cleaner, in my opinion. But I just want to show you what you got available. Let's go to the next one. CatDog. Return true if the string cat and dog appear the same number of times in the given string. This feels very similar to our last one. Instead of counting hi, we're counting cat, we're counting dog, right? So two separate counts. And ultimately what we're returning is a true or false value. Are those two counts equal? So we're going to loop through our string. With each iteration, we're going to ask, is this equal to cat? Is this 3-character substring equal to cat? No. Is it equal to dog? Maybe. Every time we find cat, every time we find dog, we're going to increment the appropriate variable. So why don't we start off with that? Why don't we create int cat, int dog. I'm creating counter variables. This one tracks the number of times that cat occurs. This tracks the number of times that dog occurs. We're ready to start looping. Now, you are probably already thinking, we just had out of bounds issues, right, on the previous problem. This one feels very similar. We're going to have out of bounds issues here. I still like to start with just my standard loop and then come back and figure out later what do I need to do in order to fix that. So with each iteration, I'm going to cut a 3-character substring. I know it's 3 characters because I'm looking for cat, I'm looking for dog. Interesting enough, these have the same length. That's super important, right? So let's get the 3-character substring. I'm going to do that by going into str using substring. And we want this to update with I. So as we advance through the string, I'm going to do I, comma, I plus 3. This is going to give me a 3-character substring beginning at index I, and then we save that into a variable. I want to know, is that equal to cat? If it is, I have found the word cat, so I'm going to increment my cat variable. Okay. While we're still here, same iteration. If I'm, like I just looked for cat, I now need to check for dog. It's the same 3-character substring. So I'm going to say if 3 equals dog. I'm going to do a dog plus plus. So we're just going through the string, cutting a 3-character substring. I ask, is it equal to cat? If so, increment cat. Is it equal to dog? If so, increment dog. We do that for every 3-character substring out of str using our loop. So after the loop is over, I need to check these things. We ultimately want to know, do they appear the same number of times? So if cat is equal to dog, I'm going to return true. Otherwise, I'm going to return false. And there are a lot of ways that we can improve this. I'm going to hit the go. See that I forgot a parenthesis on this if statement. I'm going to hit the go. And we got index out of bounds. Same problem as last time. I'm looking for 3-character substrings. That is okay when we're here. That is okay when we're here. That's okay when we're here. The moment that I go one step further and I try to cut a 3-character substring, I don't have enough characters to do that, right? When I only have 2 characters left, it's a problem. I want to stop early, even earlier than the previous problem. I want to stop 2 characters earlier. The condition ultimately controls my stopping point. So we're going to do, as long as I is less than str.length, minus 2. If we look at this string, this has a length of 6, right? So str.length is 6. Minus 2 is 4. Looking at 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm saying as long as I is less than that, that means that our last iteration occurs here whenever I is 3. So we're going to do 3, comma, 6 as our substring. So we'll start at index 3, go up to index 6. This is inclusive, exclusive. So I'm not actually trying to access index 6. That'll give us our 3-character substring. So as we saw, we did get the correct solution. Let's talk about how we can clean this up. This one comes to mind right away. I think a lot of people are starting to get into the groove with these return statements, and you recognize that, oh, we don't need this else. I'm going to hit the go button. I'm going to see that we're getting it correct. The reason why we don't need the else is because once we return, we peace out. We leave the method. Now, it's even better than that, because ultimately we're returning a Boolean. Well, this thing produces a Boolean. I am basically answering the question and then changing my true or false return based on that. We can actually just do that at the point of return. That is, return does cat equal dog. If they're the same, we get a true value. That's what we return. If they are different, we get a false value, and that's what we return. So this is definitely a change I would make. Another one I would look at making is up here. Notice we have a correct solution, but we can actually be a little bit more efficient. What do I mean? I'm cutting the 3-character substring and asking, is it equal to cat? I'm then asking, is it equal to dog? That is sometimes inefficient. Why? If I find that the current 3-character substring is equal to cat, I then turn around and ask, is it equal to dog? Well, no, we just answered the question. It is, in fact, equal to cat. There's no way it could be dog. So I only want to check this if this is false. This is going to be a very minor change in the grand scheme of things, but it is more efficient to make this an else if. Why? Well, now, instead of this being 2 independent if statements, by tacking on the else, we only check this if this is false. Right? So I'm going to get a 3-character substring. I'm going to ask, is it equal to cat? If that's true, we skip everything else in the tree, including what I have highlighted. If it is false, we would then ask, is it equal to dog? This is more efficient. Notice that it can't just be an else, because this tactic says if it's not cat, it must be dog. And that's not necessarily the case. Okay, I'm going to hit the go button. We still get them all correct, but this is technically more efficient. Let's do one more. This one is countCode. Return the number of times that the string code appears anywhere in the given string, except, will accept, any letter for the D. So cope and coup count. Very similar. We're going through, we're counting substrings. This one's a little bit different because all I need is for this to be CO and this to be E. Right? So we're effectively going through looking at 4 characters at a time. What I'm actually doing is going through looking for, I think this one would be good with an example. I'm going to grab this one, probably makes more, this one makes the most sense. Okay, because it says, you know, count code, but what I'm really looking for is this. Okay, I don't mean this as an actual space, but really what I'm looking for is a 2-character substring and a single character that just happen to be in the right spots, right? We're going to ask, is this CO, is this E? This one would actually count, by the way. We're going to advance by 1 and ask, is this CO, is this E? Is this CO, is this E? Is this CO, is this E? What about this? And you see right here, we would get another match. So for this particular example, it's a count of 2. Okay, so it's not a 4-character substring. Don't let that fool you. I'm going to create a variable that I'm calling count. We're going to loop through our string. Again, I'm going to start off with str.length and change as I need to. Okay, I want to get a 2-character substring starting at index I. That's going to be my first 2 characters. So I'm going to create string2, and that is a substring coming from str from I to I plus 2. I also want to get this character, and I need to do it in terms of I, right? In this example, I is at index 0. This is index 3, right? 0, 1, 2, 3. So what is this index in relation to I? It's just I plus 3, right? As we're going to see, whenever I increases by 1, we're now at index 1. I would want the index 3 characters away. This one right here. Right? Maybe I'll line those up, and that makes a little bit more sense. When I is at 1, I want this character to check to see if it's an E. If this is index 1, this is index 2, this is 3, this is 4. So the difference between I and this index is, again, 3. I'm going to create a char, which I'm going to call CH, or to stick with our trend here, maybe 1. And since it's just a single character, I'm going to use char at. You could use substring. Where is it in relation to I? It is 3 indexes away. Okay, if I'm looking at this example, initially my substring is AA whenever I is 0. This should be C. Right, so I'm getting AA, I'm getting C. Keep in mind that I don't care about the actual 3rd character. It can be anything according to our problem description. So I'm going to pull out a 2-character substring, and I'm going to get the single character that is 3 indexes away. Okay, I want to know, is the 2-character substring exactly CO? Right, I'm looking for exactly CO. So if 2 equals CO, that's part of it. Right? You could either nest an if statement or use a logical operator, because I need that to be true. I also need to know, does 1 equal C? Okay, I'm goofing this on purpose, right? If we actually run this, we're going to get like a dereference error or something like this. 2 is a string. I am comparing it to a string, so I'm using the equals method. 1, however, is a char. It's not a string. I'm trying to use the equals method. Chars are primitive data types. They don't have methods. So the way that I'm going to make this comparison is using the equals relational operator. So be careful here. I told you can use substring, and you can. If you use substring, you want to use the equals method. If you use char at, like I did here, you want to use the primitive data type. You want to use the equals relational operator, I should say. So this is a lesson learned, something to be careful about when you're comparing strings. Use the equals method. When you're comparing characters, use the equals relational operator. So if the 2-character substring is CO and the 1 character is, I have it matching at C, it should be an E. If the single character is an E, I'm skipping one of the characters, the 3rd one, and that's exactly what I want. But if this is true, I found it. What are we going to do in that case? We'll increment count by 1. I'm going to do this for all of my characters using my loop. So afterwards, I'm going to return count. Now we're going to get an index out of bounds for the exact same reasons. Technically, I'm getting a 2-character substring and just a single character. In terms of I, we're going like 3 indexes out, 4 indexes out. We're basically getting a 4-character substring. So I need to stop early. Right? This needs to be my last iteration when I have 4 characters. That should be my last iteration. I'm getting my out of bounds when I go 1 too far, when I only have 3 characters left, and I'm effectively getting 4. So I'm going to stop just a little bit early. We're going to do a -3 here, and you see we get a correct solution. I'm going to talk about our strategy, and we'll get out of here. We start out with a counter variable. We're going to loop through our string, stopping a little bit early. With each iteration, I'm getting a 2-character substring. I'm also going to get the single character that is 3 indexes away. And I want to know, are the 2 characters equal to CO? Is the single character equal to E? If that is true, I increment my count by 1. Right? In this example, that is true. So count would go to 1. I would increment. We would get these 2 characters. Ask, are they equal to CO? Is this character equal to E? It would be false in that case. So this doesn't happen. We still increment our I. We would get these 2 characters. See that they don't equal CO. Note that we would ask, are these equal to CO? We would get a false value. I have false and something. This would technically short circuit, so I don't even check this one over here. We would move on to the next index. Are these CO? No. Are these CO? No. Are these CO? No. Are these CO? Yes. Is this an E? Yes. We would increment count again. I would increase by 1. We would ask, is it less than our string length minus 3? We would get a false value, so we would skip everything and return our count. One thing I will point out, we don't see it in any of the examples, I don't believe, but like if this was an A, I would get these 2 characters and ask, are they equal to CO? Yes. I would get this character and ask, is it equal to E? No. I would have true and false. Overall, this would produce a false value, and so we would not increment our count. We need both of these things, and our AND logical operator accomplishes that. You could use nested if statements. I'll show you that real fast because it's super easy. This is technically the exact same thing as the AND logical operator. Right? Notice we're getting them all correct. Because the only way that I'm actually checking this is if this is true. So that is technically the exact same thing as the AND logical operator. But that's a good spot to pause. And I'll see you in the next one.